Hey guys, Anthony here. It is Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. I know I talked about it in a previous video, I think last week, but I wanted to do a quick review of the movie, the Amazon Prime movie entitled Nefarious. That movie's out right now on Amazon Prime and you could watch it for free. I highly recommend the movie. I took some notes on it when I watched it. I actually watched it several times. Watched it once alone, once with my wife, and I watched it with my dad as well. Um, Definitely feel that it's a worthwhile movie for believers to watch, as it illustrates, I think, in a really, really great um, portrayal of evil, demonic possession, things of that nature. So I think it's very worthwhile for you to watch it. Basically, the premise of the movie is there's a serial killer played by Sean Patrick Flannery, and his name in the movie is Edward Wayne Brady. He's a serial killer on death row, and he's about to be analyzed, or he has been analyzed by a psychiatrist, whom one of them, the original one, commits suicide. The one that's assigned after that is played by Jordan Belfi, and he plays Dr. Um, Martin. James Martin. And those two actors are fantastic in the movie. In fact, Sean Patrick Flannery, who plays Nefarious, the serial killer. To me, I think the guy deserves an Academy Award for the performance that he did in this movie. It's that good. And so this psychiatrist is brought to the prison on the actual day of the execution, and he's to do a final analysis of Edward Wayne Brady to see if he's competent to get executed, or if not, and he has the ability to sign off on it and either send him to be executed or to not, and just have life in prison. And so there's a couple of lines in the movie that again, just to review, the movie is a realistic view of what demonic oppression / possession could look like, or does look like. They did a very, very good job, I think, in showing this without showing gruesome, gross things. It was just the dialogue, the setting, the words that were spoken, the mood, and the going back and forth between these two in the cell while he's being analyzed by the psychiatrist. I think it was masterfully done. Again, the acting was superb. It's not for the faint of heart. It will strike a chord with you when you watch it, although it's not like a gross movie like, say, The Exorcist was years ago. This movie's a lot different, but again, it will strike a chord with you, believe me. I don't know if it was ever billed as a Christian-based movie. I saw that there's Bible studies based after it now. Maybe that's just was taken because the movie did such a good job, and it did address some biblical things that I'm going to talk about here in the movie. I think it will, after watching it, it will help you or prompt you to get even closer to Messiah as you are today. It'll prompt you to want to do more study, more prayer, more avoidance of sin. Let's put it that way. So this guy, Edward Wayne Brady, the warden touts him as a master manipulator, a genius. He's diagnosed by the original psychiatrist as psychotic or psychogenic. Those were the original verdicts given, from the original doctor. Nefarious made the original doctor commit suicide in order to bring in Dr. James to write his story. He says this. I'll tell you that much about the movie. I won't give away all the parts. Um, and he makes a statement, Nefarious does, to the doctor at the table. Now, the scene is in a cell. The doctor's in there. The doors are shut. He just has a radio. And they're sitting at a table. Nefarious is sitting on one end with his, prison garb on, and I believe he's handcuffed to the table. Like, he can move his arms, but only a certain distance. He could stand up and sit down, but he can't, grab the doctor unless the doctor actually goes into his physical space. So that's how most of the movie, the setting is, and the dialogue goes back and forth that way. So Nefarious tells the doctor, he makes a statement to him, before you leave here today, doctor, you will have committed 3 murders. And this guy, the doctor, the psychiatrist, he's like, that's impossible. I never killed anybody. This won't happen. He's basically, and he's taking notes because his job is to analyze this guy and see if he's competent to be executed. And so one of the questions that the psychiatrist asks him is regarding the beliefs of demons. What do you believe in? And Nefarious says, demons do not have beliefs. We have knowledge. We know. He makes a statement also that, hey, doctor, I've been around for millennia, thousands of years. I can't die. I don't die. I go from one person to the next. So when he says we know, he's saying it with a 3,500 year history of being on the earth, oppressing and possessing people. And he makes a statement that he says, he's asked the question, well, how do you just go into a person, like pick them at random and go in that way or possess them that way? And he says, no, we need a series of yeses in order to possess. So we need permission is what he was saying. We need permission from the host. And he gives the process: extreme temptation, obsession, infestation, possession, and finally subjugation, which is when he says we own him. At subjugation, they own the host body. At one point in the movie, a priest is brought in. The psychiatrist has a priest brought in because he feels that he's not, being an atheist. He admits that he's an atheist. He says he's not adept at, religious things. So he brings a priest in to help at this point. And you'll see the reaction from Nefarious when the priest initially walks in the room. It's one of like fright or screaming. And then once the priest starts talking, Nefarious, and you could see right away that the priest is not a believer. He's just a poser, really, wearing garb of a priest. And so the demon, Nefarious, is no longer threatened by him. And you can see that. That scene is it's really telling the way that scene is done. And so at another point, I'm skipping around some parts here. At one point, the doctor says to Nefarious, prove to me you're a demon. Invite me in. In other words, possess me. And the demon's like, okay. And finally they sit face to face for like a standoff. And then the doctor says, see, it's all a bunch of baloney. There's no change in me. Nothing happened, see? And Nefarious just kind of glances at him and snickers and says, something to the effect, in due time, we'll see about that. And then he goes on to, and I won't go over these parts because I don't want to give away a lot of the movie. He goes into some personal things of the psychiatrist that really nobody could ever know. Let's put it that way. It's pretty telling on what he divulges to the psychiatrist. At one point, this dialogue I will go over. The psychiatrist says to the serial killer, Edward Wayne Brady, or Nefarious is the demon's name. He says, "Your side's not doing too well. We have never been freer." In other words, your side, the demon side, is not doing too well. We humans, our people here on Earth, have never been freer. He says, "Literacy is at an all-time high. We are working to eliminate racism. We're tolerant. We have gender inequality we're working on. People can love who they want, be who they want, do what they want. Diversity is no longer a dream. Hate speech is no longer tolerated. And politically, we are claiming the moral high ground." He tells Nefarious this. And then Nefarious says, "James, I think I love you." He's so impressed by what he just heard. And then he says, "James, the average high school graduate reads at a 6th grade level. Basketball players making $30 million per year, decrying racism, all while wearing sneakers made from slave labor. Your world currently has 40 million slaves," he tells them. "More than Romans had at the height of their empire. Half of those are sex slaves, James," he says. And he uses his name a lot in the movie. He even calls him Jimmy at several points of the movie. One of the ways he gets in his head. "As for hate speech, we didn't even come up with that," he says. He tells James. He says, "You came up with it." In other words, you humans came up with it. He says, "You amaze even us at times. Bottom line is," he says, "you're over. You're done. There is evil everywhere. No one even cares. With your movies, TV, media, we desensitized you. We redirected your worldview. And winners and losers, that gets let out at the time of death." He tells them basically, at the time of death, the winners and losers, in other words, who goes to heaven and who goes to hell, is a closely guarded secret, he says. But he says one thing. In other words, it's a closely guarded secret. Even the demons don't know the final numbers, how they're told out. But he does say this. He says, "There are more of you ending up in my master's house than with the enemy." And the enemy he portrays as God. So there are many more ending up in my master's house than with God, he tells him. And he says, "A lot more, Jimmy." I thought that was a pretty telling scene as well. He tells James that whatever my master has, it's mine to give. The dark gospel, he wants the psychiatrist, James, to write a dark gospel, like the life of this demonic entity. An invitation, he says, and I thought this was very telling, to reject the Mosaic covenant. Okay, he mentions the Mosaic covenant, the law, the Torah. We want, by men reading this dark gospel, we want them to reject the Torah, the Mosaic covenant. Reject the idea of sin completely, he says, and to reach your full potential. In other words, you're your own person. Live and let live. Do whatever thou wilt. Sin is not sin. It's just a definition that people come up with. It's just a name. And rejecting all of God's laws and commandments. That's what he wants this dark gospel to represent. He talks about that he, meaning God, gave man free will because he wanted his creation's love. But if man isn't free, then the love has no value, does it? So in his needy, selfish, pathetic way, he doomed himself from the start. And this is some of the dialogue that Nefarious is talking about in the movie. He says this, and I think this is an important part of the movie, or was a telling part. He says, "We failed." In other words, the demons failed because of the carpenter. He addresses Jesus, Yahusha, as the carpenter in the movie. That's what he calls him. He says, he was a thorn in our side, our greatest threat. We thought if we could eliminate him, the world would be ours forever. We had no idea of the consequences. The cross was our greatest mistake. He says, we thought we lost James, until our master realized that man still wants to be his own God and to serve no one but himself. So he says, yeah, that tripped the whole thing at Calvary tripped us up, but then Satan, my master, saw that man still wants to be his own person. Still wants to be his own God. James, for serving my master, he offers you the world and everything in it, just like he offered the carpenter. He tells him. So if the doctor agrees to do this particular thing that Nefarious wants him to do, he can get whatever he wants from Nefarious. Then there's a scene, and I'll close here, later on in the movie, where Nefarious goes in to get his head shaved, and the barber, whose name is Styles, that's his nickname, I guess, he says, it looks to me like he's trying to witness to him, and he says, ain't nothing you done can't be forgiven, he tells Nefarious as he sits in the barber chair. And Nefarious kind of mumbles under his breath, that's what you think. And then he says this, each new morn, new widows howl, new infants cry, new insults slap the face of heaven. He tells this to the barber. And the barber says, you trying to impress Styles? He says, well, that ain't you, bro, that's Shakespeare. And Nefarious says, well, the words are his, but the deeds are mine. I thought, though, that was another really good scene in the movie. And there are other scenes. I don't want to give away the movie. I do recommend that you watch it. Pay attention to the dialogue. Listen to what is being said, because it relates to a lot of what's going on today. And again, they do a very good portrayal of evil, demonic possession, oppression, subjugation, and the part that the actor plays, that plays Edward Wayne Brady / Nefarious, is one of the best acting scenes, depictions, parts that I've seen in a very long time. So we'll leave it at that. The movie's Nefarious. It's Amazon Prime. Definitely worth your while to watch it. Let me know what you think when you watch it. Leave a comment. Anthony signing off. Thanks for tuning in today. Take care and stay ready.